Ladies and gentlemen, Kung Fu Panda 4 is a movie that exists, and that is a stated fact. Now, I am gonna go on record right here and say, and you will come back to this video in 5 years, and you will be like, oh my god, boss was correct. Kung Fu Panda 4 will age incredibly well. I literally just came back from the movie theater. I just watched Kung Fu Panda 4, and I have to say, it was not nearly as bad as everyone is saying that it is online. So, Chef Rillis, someone that I respect incredibly much in the cartoon age of reviewing, he made a video, Kung Fu Panda 4 is a movie that exists. Not the highest title. Chef watches the not very epic Jack Black Panda movie that does not make me cry. This made me sad to read, okay? As an Kung Fu Panda advocate, someone that stood upon the throne of the Kung Fu Panda hierarchy for generations, someone who believes that Kung Fu Panda 1 is possibly the best animated movie ever made, an actual 10 out of 10 masterpiece, and Kung Fu Panda 2 is a solid 9 out of 10. Kung Fu Panda 3 is a solid 6 out of 10. But Kung Fu Panda 4, in my opinion, is actually not bad at all. Everyone's been shitting on it because the villain is lackluster, and they're right! The villain is lackluster, okay? It is not as good as the first two. However, it is a good-ass movie and a great final arc for Po. For those of you that haven't seen the movie yet, spoilers obviously, but let's just get into it here because I want to set the record straight on my boy!
And I hope it's just the beginning of a new creative renaissance.
No. Whenever he starts like that, he's about to say something very negative.
Again, don't fuck up Kung Fu Panda 4.
Ah!
They found a way to fuck it up.
Oh.
No! No! They didn't, okay? The boss is lackluster, okay? The boss is lackluster. The boss. No, I'm the boss. The villain is lackluster. The chameleon, cringe. The actual arc is great. And no, I'm not comparing it to the Puss in Boots sequel, okay? Puss in Boots sequel, masterpiece. Kung Fu Panda's sequel, great movie. Not the same thing. Not fair. Okay, not fair!
Oh dear. Kung Fu Panda 4 has been one of the most bizarre releases in recent memory.
Honestly, true. It came out, everyone was freaking out that it was happening because it seemed like Po became the Dragon Master or whatever at the end of the third movie. However, when it came out, people were so sad and annoyed. But it was actually comedic gold. It was a great movie. Y'all just hate.
Starting, of course, with its relative lack of marketing that really baffled me and all the other Kung Fu Panda heads out there.
True. I didn't even know this was happening until it came out, basically. And I'm like the biggest Kung Fu Panda fan out there.
Like, surely DreamWorks would want to market a new installment in one of their most popular franchises of all time. And to make matters worse, the one major trailer we got for it did not exactly paint a very flattering picture. It looked like a typical generic Kung Fu Panda movie that didn't really do anything.
Like, the jokes are cringe, I'm not gonna lie. However, some of it was really funny. Dude goes in, tries to look like a badass. He's like, I eat mahjong pieces for breakfast. Then he puts some mahjong pieces in his mouth, he chews them, and he spits out like half his teeth. Like, that was very funny.
New or interesting like the other ones did. I wasn't particularly excited, but I figured I'd go in with an open mind. And
yes!
Maybe it would surprise me. Like
I went in with a closed mind. I went in expecting it to be bad. I think that's probably why I liked it so much, because I went into that movie expecting to hate it, expecting to need to grin and bear it for 2 hours, and I actually enjoyed it the whole time.
The original trilogy. And you know what? It did surprise me.
No.
It's even worse than I thought.
No! How could you say that it's worse than the third one? What is wrong with you?
Don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible movie or anything.
Yeah!
It's a breath of fresh air compared to Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate.
Okay, dude, Megamind coming out right before Kung Fu Panda was the best possible thing that could have happened to it.
Which I am working on a very large review of for later this month. But like, having a colonoscopy done is a breath of fresh air compared to Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate.
True.
That isn't saying anything.
Dude, honestly, Raid Shadow Legends is better than Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate.
When I say this movie didn't...
You didn't like the Hidden Leaf Village of Pandas? No, I didn't, okay? I'm sorry. The third movie was not as good as this one. This was a great concluding arc to Po. Sometimes growing up... Dude, Po he's the Dragon Warrior, all right? Dragon Master. Spiritual cum fucker, okay? Bro is an absolute mad lad, okay? He is insanely OP. He is OP AF. He's the strongest ninja in the entire Leaf Village, god damn it. Bro's got Madara's freaking jutsus, and he's got Hashirama cells. And you know what? I like the fact that he was a badass in this movie, and he won every single fight. But it's not the point. It's not the battle that mattered anymore. It was changing, being willing to change, taking a role bigger than himself, creating a legacy. That's what this movie was all about. And it was beautiful.
Live up to my already not super high
Also, when okay, I know they make Tai Lung a lot, okay, we're getting into that later. I'm sure he's gonna mention that part.
expectations, I only mean that just barely. I expected something decent, but instead I got something that actually kind of pissed me off with its mediocrity. Which is crazy, because there really isn't much to talk about here.
Really?
It just doesn't really feel like
What?
a movie. Owed in large part to the atrocious
I agree with that. The pace is not good. I do agree with that. The pacing is bad. I feel like the movie was missing an entire act in the middle. When it got to the final battle, I'm like, okay, so Poe's gonna lose, right? And then Nito like do something to get back into it, and then he just won. And I was like, wait, what? Like that was.
and complete lack of any tension or stakes. Poe needs to defeat the chameleon.
But that's where you're wrong, Mr. Rillis. Sorry, I really like Chef Rillis. I really hope people don't take this as me slighting the guy. I think that guy's like a tremendously great reviewer out here. But no, that's not the stakes.
and complete lack of any tension or stakes. Poe needs to defeat the chameleon.
No, Poe needs to find a successor. Poe needs to be willing to change. Poe needs to be willing to give up being the Dragon Warrior. He needs to evolve past who he always dreamed to be. He needs to grow up, bro. He needs to grow up.
Who is far and away the worst villain in the Kung Fu Panda series.
Easily. Chameleon is a terrible villain. Like an actual terrible villain.
The unanimously agreed upon previous holder of that crown, Kai, was at least threatening and had the sickest fucking theme song of all time.
Oh, true. Kai had a thick theme song. But I really didn't like Kai.
He made up for his relatively weak motivation by easily dispatching every Kung Fu master and serving as a worthy, powerful foe. The chameleon does the same thing, except not until the final act of the film. So
Because Chameleon was much more of a foil to Zhen than Chameleon was to Poe. Poe's foil was himself. He had to keep fighting with his inner self on being willing to change. Chameleon's main adversary was Zhen. The fact that they both grew up in the gutter, they both grew up disrespected, and Chameleon and Zhen followed the same principles to get to where they are, right? The only major difference was Zhen cares about other people, and Chameleon only cares about herself. And that was the ultimate conclusion here. Again, I'm not saying that the pacing was good in any way. And again, I am not saying at all that Chameleon was a good villain. Chameleon was easily Chameleon. I don't know who was worse, Chameleon or Kai. I really didn't like Kai, but they were both bad villains. They were both not well written villains at all. We didn't even get a backstory for Chameleon. Chameleon's tragic backstory was, I was short, and then Moist Critical's just waving his face in the air. No.
for the first hour, the most evil action she commits on
Pushing someone down the stairs.
screen is pushing someone down the stairs.
Listen! If you knew anything about One Piece, you wouldn't be making believe that's enough. God damn it.
Oh no, she's so scary, you guys. And the whole taking the old villain's powers thing is so weightless. It doesn't feel nearly as earned. It just
Exactly! It wasn't earned! Because she picked the fast road to success through stealing that shit. And Zhen learned the lesson that no, if you want to really grow and become someone better, you gotta freaking become a legend yourself. You gotta work hard. You gotta trust people. You gotta make friendships. You can't just steal and cringe and gafuffle your way to the top. That was the foil. It wasn't earned at all.
Most of the villains don't even talk. So it doesn't
True. I feel like half the voice actors, they just didn't want to pay them.
even feel like those are the real, actual characters. The chameleon should be the deadliest foe in the series, and like, I guess her final fight was kinda cool, but it really just is that one fight and nothing else. She has no intimidating presence throughout most of the movie.
Because she's not a kung fu master. You see, she has no intimidating presence simply because she isn't a kung fu master. Her dream was to become a kung fu master, so she therefore stole the kung fu of all the other villains. She didn't have an intimidating presence because it was through scheming and trickery that she managed to get her way to the top through political power. And then when she got the abilities of everyone in the past, which would make her leagues stronger than Po just by default. She got Po's power, plus Tai Lung's, plus Zhen's, plus literally everyone's. She had way more power. Bro, if you took the Dragon Ball Scouter level, a Chameleon would have been way, way, way higher than Po, even though Po basically dispatched her with ease because he worked to get his powers, and she just kind of yoinked it.
Viola Davis is a great actress, but she just doesn't work for this character at all. I never found her voice intimidating, and her motivation is so stupid.
A terrible motivation. I stand by it.
I won't get into it because it's a spoiler, I guess, but basically, her entire motivation
I was short!
is completely negated by the existence of Mantis and Viper.
I know, I said that also watching the movie. I don't know about Viper, but Mantis for sure. She's like, someone small could never become a kung fu master. And then meanwhile, Mantis out there. No, true. I again, agreed. I'm not defending her as a villain. She's not a good villain. Okay? That said, I think the themes in her character were an actual proper foil to Zhen.
Did the writers just forget those characters exist? The answer is yes, by the way. The Furious Five don't appear in the bulk of this. Probably because they didn't want to pay the voice actors.
I mean, I would think probably because they wouldn't have a role in this movie. I think that it was good that they weren't in this movie, honestly. Before going into it, I was very disappointed that they weren't going to be in the movie. But I think that it worked out well without them. Could you imagine? You only had an hour and a half for this movie. How are you going to fit in character plot lines for 5 more characters when you barely had enough for the main ones?
Same with those aforementioned villains. It just makes this installment feel so cheap. Like, the Kung Fu Panda universe honestly feels smaller and more limited after this movie. I don't know how you...
Really? Damn.
You manage that. Most of the movie is Po dicking around with Aquafina. Is she annoying in this movie in the same vein as Raya or that scuttlebutt shit? No, not really. But she's not good either. This is just another
I thought she was fine. I mean, she was fine for what she was. Like, I like the idea that you're not, just like how Po is your very unconventional kung fu master, right? Like in the first movie, Po shows up, Shifu hates him, he turns out to just be some fat guy, and he's just eating all day, and he's like, bro, you must work to become more strong and powerful, and he's like all upset and that. Like, the fact that you have an incredibly unconventional next character, I think that works out so well, right? Like, the next Dragon Warrior that's picking up the mantle is also an incredibly unconventional character. It's someone who was a thief, who was a bad dude.
Generic and charmless performance from her. And I was never able to see her as a character. I just heard Aquafina the entire time. Again, just because she wasn't actively obnoxious and unfunny, that doesn't mean it was a good performance. I also never really bought that she and Po were becoming friends. Their chemistry was absolutely nothing special, and pales in comparison to what he has with Tigress. They even do a worse version of the scene where Tigress hugs Po in the second movie. It made me feel—
Yeah, I see that.
Nothing here. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Who's Tigress? Never heard of her.
Oh God, no, don't do this to my boy. No!
It was decent, I suppose, and there were a lot of cool—
No, the action was great. Kung Fu Panda action is always great.
Visual flourishes here and there. Plus, while not a lot of the jokes worked for me, some of
the comedy was really good. If you're just going in there for a comedy alone, it worked.
Them definitely did. Especially the scene where Mr. Ping and Lee leave the tavern.
Yo, I was just talking about that.
That was pretty funny. Speaking of which,
when he goes into the tavern, he's like, I eat mahjong pieces for breakfast. And he puts them into his mouth and he spits his teeth out. He's like trying to act all cool. And it's just like an absolute fail.
I'm gonna be honest, I would have liked this movie a lot more if it was just Mr. Ping and Lee doing a buddy adventure. Their scenes are genuinely really charming and probably my favorites in the whole film.
Their scenes are awesome.
As soon as it cut away from them, back to the Po and Aquafina stuff.
I like the inner monologues with Po. I thought Jen's character arc actually did work. I thought, again, pacing was bad. I thought it could have been more fleshed out a little bit, given her a little more personality. Instead of just kind of going through the motions. But I think as far as what Po's growing up story needs to be, evolving past the Dragon Warrior. I think they did a good job.
I was like, oh great, the main plot is back, yippee. Poe himself is the same as ever, pretty charming and whatnot, but I just feel like his character has been so stagnant for a while now. It feels like he really stopped growing as a person after the second film, and now he's—
Well, that's why the third film was bad, but in this one he did grow. He grew in every film except for the third.
Just kind of hanging out and saying skadoosh, and I don't know. He's still charming, but not really interesting. The film is about him.
The fact that he grew up, he found an apprentice, he was willing to change. Being willing to change is like such a scary concept for so many people. I don't know anyone that's like just readily excited for change and not at all scared about that shit.
Him relinquishing the title of Dragon Warrior and becoming spiritual leader, which—
whatever that is.
I don't understand. I thought there was only one Dragon Warrior, but maybe I don't understand the lore that well. I don't know. But the thing is, nothing really comes of Poe trying to be a spiritual leader. There's a couple scenes where he tries to avoid a conflict just by talking, but in one
and it never works.
of them, it doesn't work, and he just resorts to fighting like he always does.
Yeah, and he's a ninja, bro.
So it doesn't really feel like a major change.
Naruto needs to talk no jutsu, but he also knows how to kick butt.
Change is taking place for his character. Aside from that, he attempts to give sage wisdom sometimes,
Which always fails.
and messes it up. That is pretty much the extent of Poe trying to be a spiritual leader in this movie. It barely felt different from how he acted in the third one, where he was trying to be a teacher.
Because the open-mindedness to change is being the spiritual leader. It's not just being stagnant and thinking that my life is just this endless series of butt kickings. I don't know. I thought it was really good in that regard. I thought Poe's arc and conclusion was solid. Again, not saying it's a great movie. It's a 7.5 10 8. It's not a great movie. It's not like the 9 of Kung Fu Panda 2 or the 10 of Kung Fu Panda 1. But it's a really enjoyable movie, and I do think it'll age really well. I think people will look back at Poe's character arc and be satisfied with the conclusion from the fourth.
What I'm trying to say is that this film adds nothing to the Kung Fu Panda universe, and it just kind of feels like a waste of time. I've noticed a lot of reviews saying, yeah, this definitely didn't feel like an essential or impactful part of the story, but it was still enjoyable. I could definitely see where they're coming from.
I thought it was impactful. Like, even the moment at the end where you have all the master villains that Poe fought, like the fire-breathing crocodile guy, right? That Poe beats him off screen. The fact that happens, and in Poe's history as the Dragon Warrior, he has done so much to the point that your Lord Shens and your Kais, your fire-breathing crocodiles, all these guys, they're just little chapters in his history. He has beaten every major villain in the entirety of his era, okay? And it's time to fucking retire. So when he goes up against the Chameleon and she's bringing out all of his old adversaries, we haven't even heard of most of them. It's time for Poe to grow. Put down his butt-kicking shoes. Get an apprentice.
But I don't know. I take this series a lot more seriously than the average Joe Schmo because, well...
Because the first one is a masterpiece, an actual classic, and the second one's pretty great too.
First two movies really took themselves seriously. This isn't really a franchise you can just do a quirky, meaningless little adventure in and say, okay, this is the next mainline installment in the series. Everything about Kung Fu Panda 4 feels like a plotline you'd see in a TV show. And this movie didn't necessarily have to be really dramatic or impactful for me to like it. If it told a kind of fun story with funny moments and really good action, I'd probably say it's decent and worth being a part of the saga.
That's exactly how I feel, though.
But I'm sorry, that is not what I thought of this. It just kind of feels like Kung Fu Panda on autopilot. The action was mostly just fine, the comedy was mostly just fine. At best, I guess I can say it's a watchable enough movie.
That's a dub. We take those. We take those. We take those.
At worst, I think it kind of misunderstands the previous films and their characters. There's a scene late in this film that is just complete bullshit. And if you see the movie...
Well, I know the scene he's talking about. It's the Tai Lung scene, and it was so frustrating. Like, they completely undercut Tai Lung's character, and it was so sad. At the end, okay, spoilers, so you can skip it for 5 seconds if you like. Tai Lung walks up to Poe at the end of the movie where Poe does something awesome, and he's like, maybe Oogway was right about you, Dragon Warrior. Maybe you actually are worthy of the title. And Poe's like, oh my god, thank you so much. Right? And that scene is like, Okay? But why though? Tai Lung was so cool. Tai Lung was awesome. Why would you do that? Bro, he just is like, oh, maybe he was right about you, Panda. Oh, come on, man. Come on. I was very frustrated, not gonna lie.
I think you'll know which one I'm talking about. Overall, I just don't think this was a film that needed to be made. It's not a complete betrayal of Kung Fu Panda as a franchise. It doesn't ruin
Yes!
anything.
Yes!
But like I said earlier, I just think it makes the universe feel so much smaller. And I don't understand why this movie had to be like this, because I think we all kind of looked at
Yeah, okay, dude, you can't compare it to Puss in Boots 2, though. That was a masterpiece.
Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and subconsciously hoped that this would be the style of the next Kung Fu Panda.
And then Vegeta says, you are my #1 Kakarot. No!
Both in terms of the animation and the storytelling. It just made perfect sense, right? Kung Fu Panda already had some of the sickest fight scenes and most dramatic storytelling in DreamWorks' entire catalog, so pairing it with The Last Wish...
There was no dramatic storyline, emotional shit going on in this movie. And that was missing. And that's why it wasn't a masterpiece. But to say it wasn't even decent, to say that it was bad, that everyone seems to be saying it...
Style seems like a match made in heaven. It really makes what we got all the more baffling. I'm not gonna hold this against the movie, because I think it would be kind of petty to judge it by those standards, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Instead of a true banger that goes toe-to-toe with those excellent original 2 entries, we get what is pretty unanimously considered the weakest film in the entire series. At least from the reactions I've read so far.
Yeah. And then there's me, who still says it's better than 3 and it was decent, okay?
Doubt that sentiment will change over time. Unless Kung Fu Panda 5 is somehow even weaker.
No, okay. No, what?
Speaking of the number 5, that's the score we got here. 5.
Shit, that is bad.
5 out of 10.
I don't know, man. I'm not with you. I'm not with you on this. God damn it. Maybe I'm just coping. Maybe I'm just snorting the copium the whole time, but I thought it was a solid 7.5.
Anyway, at least it's not Megamind 2 bad. Back to the trenches.
Yeah, that was a 0 out of 10.
Working on that video I go. Good night, Valley of Peace.
Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I think Poe should have just copied the story of Vinland Saga. Poe just goes up there, Chameleon starts beating him up, and Poe says, I have no enemies. Then Chameleon shoots himself in the head. Yes! That would have been peak fiction. I completely agree. All in all, was it a bad movie? No. Was it a good movie? I think it was decent. I think it was a very decent movie. But yeah, villain was bad for sure. And the pacing was pretty bad for sure. If you made it to the end, click one of these 2 videos, which also will definitely get me canceled. See you live on King. Stay weird, fam.